What if I told you that the next big economic success story in Asia might not be China, Japan, or even India, but Malaysia? Yeah, Malaysia. I know it's not the first country that comes to mind when you think about global economic powerhouses, but quietly, and without a lot of the drama we see elsewhere, Malaysia is turning itself into one of the smartest, most strategic, and most balanced economies in the region. It may not be the biggest, but it's got the potential to be one of the most influential. And honestly, a lot of people are starting to take notice. Malaysia has become one of the fastest growing economies in Southeast Asia, which, in recent decades, has been known for incredible economic growth. Just think about it. In the span of 2 decades, Malaysia transformed itself from being a relatively poor, commodity-based economy into a highly diversified, middle-income success story. That's already impressive. But what makes Malaysia really interesting is how it's done it. We're living through one of the most remarkable economic shifts in human history. Billions of people, especially across Asia, now have access to education, infrastructure, and capital. And this has unleashed enormous productivity. Malaysia has made this progress in a slightly different way. It's not trying to become the next China, it doesn't have the population for that, and it's not even aiming for it. Instead, it's leaned into other strengths that are arguably more sustainable in the long run. If Malaysia keeps playing its cards right, it could absolutely become one of the most strategically important economies in the region. Not because of its size, but because of its positioning, both economically and geographically. Think about this for a second. Malaysia is located right in the middle of the world's most active shipping route, the Strait of Malacca. It connects the Indian Ocean to the South China Sea and is one of the busiest maritime trade corridors on the planet. Over a quarter of the world's trade flows through this narrow waterway. That's huge. Geographically, it's split between 2 major landmasses and surrounded by some of the tensest geopolitical waters anywhere. That's not just fascinating, it's powerful. Yeah, Malaysia is probably going to be a name we hear a lot more in the coming years. But to really understand why, there are a few things we need to look at. What's driven Malaysia's economic rise? What challenges does it still face on its way to becoming a fully advanced economy? And what does this growth mean for the rest of the region? Let's rewind a bit. Before it gained independence, Malaysia was part of what was then called British Malaya, a chain of colonies turned into an agricultural and resource base for the British Empire. At one point, it was the world's largest exporter of tin, rubber, and palm oil. After World War II and independence, the country faced a lot of the same challenges that other post-colonial nations did. It had to build itself up, create a national economy, and figure out how to participate in a rapidly industrializing world. In the 1970s, Malaysia rolled out something called the New Economic Policy. Its main goals were to reduce poverty, narrow income gaps, and improve education. But what really set Malaysia apart was that it looked outward, it studied successful nearby countries and adapted what worked. The so-called 4 Asian Tigers, Hong Kong, Singapore, South Korea, and Taiwan, were used as models. These were countries that Malaysia once competed with, or even led, but they'd pulled ahead. Instead of resenting that, Malaysia took notes and followed suit. And that decision marked the beginning of a huge transformation. Focusing on exports, especially in manufacturing. Garment industries were among the first to get serious attention. Free trade zones were set up in places like Penang to promote export growth and invite foreign players to join the ride. Malaysia realized early on, if you want to grow fast, you can't do it alone. You need know-how, capital, and partnerships. And came in. Japanese firms played a massive role in helping Malaysia grow. Car companies like Mitsubishi, Honda, and Toyota helped Malaysia establish automotive manufacturing. Like Sony, Panasonic, and Hitachi helped build out the electrical and electronics industries. Semiconductor firms like Renesas added to the mix. These weren't just investments, they were knowledge transfers. Malaysia followed this foreign direct investment model, and it paid off. Even during the tough times, like the 1997 Asian financial crisis, Malaysia continued to see GDP growth. But here's where things get really smart. Malaysia didn't just grow and stop. It used that growth to build. The government reinvested in national infrastructure, highways, ports, internet, all of which became some of the best in Asia. In fact, Surveys consistently show that Malaysian citizens are more satisfied with their infrastructure than people in many richer Western countries. Of course, help too. Like I said earlier, Malaysia's location on the Strait of Malacca makes it essential to global trade. It's a choke point for goods heading into China and other East Asian markets. China, in particular, depends heavily on this route for energy and food imports. So, it gives it quiet leverage. And here's another underappreciated factor: time zones. Malaysia shares workday hours with major trading partners like China and Singapore. But it also overlaps business hours with parts of Europe and the US. It's a goldmine for remote work, digital services, and global coordination. That's a popular destination, not just for trade but also for tourists, expats, and digital nomads. People can earn in dollars or euros, live in Malaysia for a fraction of the cost, and enjoy a high quality of life. Sure, this can push up prices in some local markets, but the trade-off is real economic activity, jobs, and wealth creation. Now, one of Malaysia's most interesting economic advantages: purchasing power parity, or PPP. Basically, your money can actually buy in a given country. Take a $50,000 income. In Malaysia, that can cover a nice home, transport, food, entertainment, even private healthcare for a family. In New York or London, you'd be barely scraping by. PPP helps Malaysia punch above its weight. It makes the country look wealthier than its nominal GDP suggests and makes it more attractive to investors, workers, and companies alike. Of course, this strength is also a potential vulnerability. Malaysia and on foreign innovation. In the early days, this worked great. Japan, South Korea, the US helped build Malaysia's industrial base. But if those partners slow down, Malaysia could get stuck making outdated products. And honestly, we're starting to see signs of that. Government officials have warned that weaker global demand, especially in tech, is beginning to drag down growth. Malaysia needs to start creating and innovating on its own if it wants to climb into the ranks of high-income economies. And this brings us to a tricky part of Malaysia's story: its dependency on foreign direct investment. Yes, it's better. But without strong internal R&D and better wages, other low-cost countries like Vietnam or Indonesia could easily take that investment away. Malaysia had once aimed to become fully self-sufficient by 2020. That didn't happen. And while they've made enormous progress, there's still work to do. There's also the issue of ethnic economic policies. The NEP introduced affirmative action policies to improve the economic standing of the Malay population. While the intent was noble, critics say it has created a kind of reverse discrimination, privileging certain groups while potentially discouraging merit-based growth. And in places like East Malaysia, which are more rural and culturally distinct, people often feel left behind. Then there's corruption. The 1MDB scandal is one of the most infamous financial crimes in modern history. Billions were siphoned off from Malaysia's sovereign wealth fund, and some of that money even ended up financing Hollywood films, including The Wolf of Wall Street. It was an international embarrassment and a huge blow to public trust. Malaysia has tried to clean things up. Between 2019 and 2023, it rolled out a national anti-corruption plan. Some say it lacks teeth, but it's still a step forward. So where does Malaysia go from here? Well, it's already laid out a new roadmap, the National Industrial Master Plan 2030, or NIMP 2030. The plan focuses on increasing industrial complexity, boosting R&D, embracing advanced technologies like automation and AI, and ensuring sustainability. A major focus is Malaysia currently of global semiconductor testing and packaging. Companies like Intel and Infineon have made big bets here. The government's also funding programs to train tens of thousands of engineers and workers for this next generation of tech. It's a smart pivot, one that could help Malaysia escape the middle-income trap. Now, people often ask, can Malaysia compete with its neighbors? Countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, and Thailand are also making moves. But this isn't a zero-sum game. In fact, Malaysia shares a lot of trade with Vietnam and operates joint economic zones with Singapore. The region often grows together. Malaysia's only real competition is Malaysia. Let's quickly look at the numbers. Malaysia's GDP is about $488 billion, slightly behind Thailand and Vietnam. Its per capita income is around $14,000, right in line with the global average. Stability? Pretty solid, especially by regional standards. Growth? The economy has doubled in size over the past decade. Exports? Strong in technical, conductors and electrical goods. So, where does Malaysia stand? It's not the biggest. Not yet the richest. But it is one of the most balanced, stable, and forward-looking economies in Asia. It's building a model that doesn't just chase growth, it invests in infrastructure, embraces diversity, and encourages global participation. The foundation is already there. The future? That depends on Malaysia, and Malaysia alone.